Yo, what is going on YouTube? I am Germ here. In this video today, I want to talk a little bit about G2. Obviously a very popular team, controversial team, polarizing team that, especially after this last offseason where people felt like, they screwed over a lot of their long-time successful players and even a lot of G2 fans. Some of their favorite players got screwed over. A lot of G2 fans were Reckless fans or liked Wonder or liked Perkz, and there was all this Perkz and Carlos drama, or they liked Mickey. It just super weird. A new era for G2. Yes, Jankos and Caps are still around, and obviously they are very popular players. People love them, but a lot of new faces, a lot of moving parts, a lot of question marks. Management's different, coaching staff's different, all this stuff. And people were pretty skeptical about G2 coming into the season, and rightfully so. But now we are 11 games into the spring split. We are more than halfway done. We're into that second round robin, and yes, it is just spring split, and yes, it is just regular season. It's not even the playoffs for spring split yet. But I think there is some stuff we can start to talk about, and some moments and stuff from the first half plus of the G2 season to start talking about and start evaluating this roster, and see where G2's at. So definitely drop a like if you guys do enjoy this video. I would appreciate that a ton. And subscribe to stay up to date on all my latest content. With that being said, let's get right into this. So I just want to start by checking in on the LEC standings, which I think is actually really interesting. LEC is super crazy, super competitive, and super close this season. Obviously, there was a time where Rogue was sitting at 9-0. They beat literally everyone in the first round robin, and it was looking like they might start to pull away from the rest of the pack. They might be clearly the best team in the LEC as, kind of 2 through 7 kind of beat up on each other, and everybody beats everybody, and there's no clear kind of strongest team or weakest team. It's just a big jumble. All of a sudden Rogue is 9-2. All of a sudden Rogue looks very beatable. All of a sudden their play style and some of their players look very exploitable, and no one is as scared of Rogue, going into this next weekend as they were before. It's not completely unreasonable to say, hey, Rogue might not be the best team in the LEC, which is something I had already kind of warned about, something we had already touched on a little bit, that yes, hey, Rogue, they are the regular season gods, and yes, they're off to another hot start in the regular season, but none of this is really going to prove, no one's really going to change their minds about Rogue until we see them do it in the playoffs. But hey, they're still in a really good spot, obviously sitting at 9-2, but maybe their collapse has started a little bit sooner than normal. Who knows? But anyway, the bigger point here is that G2 is sitting a single game behind Rogue at 8-3 on the season. Now, obviously, G2 had a new lineup. They have some younger, more inexperienced players like Flocked, like Targamas. I know Targamas isn't a rookie, but he's not as experienced as a lot of other players in the LEC, especially on the top teams. I mean, look at Rogue, look at Fnatic, look at Vitality, look at Mad Lions. There is some younger and inexperienced players there. For the most part, a lot of veterans on these top teams. Flocked, a rookie, a guy that wasn't necessarily even dominant in the European regional leagues. Broken Blade, who, wasn't exactly playing on a super winning team last year. And people knew G2 had the potential to be good. I think a lot of people were picking G2 to make worlds. A lot of people were picking G2 to be top 3 in the LEC. And hey, being top 3 in the LEC is pretty damn good. Maybe that's not G2 of a couple years ago that is a world title contender or an MSI title contender. And maybe it's not lining up with what Carlos is saying, that this team is still going to compete for a world title this year. But hey, overall, still pretty damn good for G2, especially with all the changes they made in the offseason, especially with all the things going on. I mean, it could always be worse. There's been teams that have tried rebuilds and they haven't gone so good. Maybe look at TSM over in the LCS right now. So G2 fans should really be happy, but it is really impressive how fast things seem to be going pretty well for G2, sitting at 8-3 in their first 11 games. That's a pretty successful rebuild. That's a pretty successful transition from Reckless, Mickey, and Wonder to Broken Blade, Flocked, and Targamas. But one thing that has me concerned, you just look at this, you're like, okay, wow, G2's doing awesome. They're 8-3. Rogue's on a 2-game losing streak. G2 might be the best team in the LEC. And hey, they might be. But I do think the LEC has been very chaotic this year. I do kind of question the overall level of the LEC, especially, heading into like an MSI in like a month or a little bit, 4 or 5 weeks from now, whenever MSI is going to be, maybe probably longer than that, probably 6 or 7 weeks from now. How strong is the LEC going to be? Is the LEC playing at a super, super high level right now? I don't know. I think that each team kind of has some pretty exploitable flaws, has a lot of holes in their game, but I don't know. But when I look at the G2 games, what I think is very, very interesting is that G2 doesn't really have a lot of bad losses. For the most part, they've beaten all the teams below them. They beat Astralis, they beat SK, they beat BDS. Those are kind of like the 3 worst teams in the league right now. They beat Astralis again. That's awesome. Excel was a weaker team before they got Mickey. They beat Excel. But then for the most part, G2 doesn't have a lot of great wins either. They're 1-1 against Mad Lions. So yes, they beat Mad Lions, but they've also lost to Mad Lions. And if you look right now, Mad Lions is 5-6. They're not that amazing of a team so far through the first 11 games. G2 lost to Rogue. G2 lost to Vitality. They did beat Misfits, which is actually a pretty solid win, and they did beat Fnatic. And that Fnatic win is the one really, really big and impressive win to me that G2 has had this season. But like I said, haven't beat Rogue, lost to Mad Lions, lost to Vitality, and yes, Vitality is sitting at 5-6 right now, but that was after an 0-3 first week of the season. I think Vitality is still ramping up, and I know they just went 0-2 this weekend, but still, that's 5-3 in their last 8 games. They're looking pretty solid. They're looking pretty good. So I don't know. It's just really, really weird to me right now that G2 is 8-3. They are towards the top of the standings, but does anyone feel super, super amazing about G2 right now? Like, I don't know. Caps hasn't been a super standout to me. He hasn't been super amazing. He's been solid. He's been pretty good most games, but not Caps. And Jankos hasn't been Jankos. And Flockhead looks like a young and inexperienced AD carry. He has good moments. He's put up some great scores. He's had some really great games. But when you look at some of the stats, this is from Oracle Elixir, and we go to something like the AD carry position now. Flockhead does not have great stats in lane. I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'm sorting by what is this? This is gold differential at 10, and you can see Flockhead is at the bottom. He's minus 291. Now, to be fair to Flockhead, he's played a lot of scaling. He has a couple Senna games. He has a Seraphine game. He has quite a few Jinx games and stuff. He's kind of fulfilling that reckless role, for a lack of a better term, where hey, you're going to be on some scaling. You're going to play for KDA in the early to mid game. Hopefully in the late game, you're going to be there to help us out, buff us out. You're going to be there for that team fight. He is kind of that KDA AD carry, for lack of a better word. But yes, his laning stats have been very, very rough. Some of that is champions. Some of that is him being a little bit inexperienced. XP differential at 10, he is second to last in the league. And CSD at 10, he is dead last. He has a lot of worrying things. CS per minute is towards the bottom again. Some of that is definitely going to be champion pool, but then also damage per minute, he is kind of towards the bottom of the league there as well, and usually with those KDA AD carries, you see them ramp up to do a super, super high damage per minute. So if you look at Flockhead, a lot of his scores are actually pretty impressive. I'm going to assume he has a pretty decent KDA. Yeah, he has the 3rd highest KDA in the league. He has some very, very impressive scores, but overall, is he having a major, major impact on these games? I don't necessarily know, but the big guy who has been very, very impressive to me so far for G2, and a guy that I'm very, very happy to see doing well, is absolutely Broken Blade. Gold differential at 10, he is 3rd in the LEC. XP differential at 10, he is 3rd in the LEC. CSD, he is 3rd in the LEC as well. He's top 3 in every single laning stat in the LEC, but then here, he is putting up 547 damage per minute, which is 2nd highest in the LEC. And in terms of, damage percentage, he is doing 28.4% of G2's damage, which is the highest damage percentage of any top laner in the league. G2 is relying on their top laner, and he is performing more so than anyone in the league. And again, this also could be due to champion pool to some extent. He has a Yone game, another Yone game, a Corki top game. But that is something that I love. Broken Blade and Targamas are adding so much flexibility to G2's drafts. The old G2, like 2019 G2, 2018 G2, they're pulling out all these crazy picks. They have Pyke everywhere all over the map. They're pulling out Yasuo, AD carry, Gragas support. They're doing all this different stuff. And, I think G2 got a little bit away from that last year. They became a little bit predictable. They weren't as crazy. They weren't as exciting. They weren't as fun. But now they have these players with massive, massive champion pools that are actually performing and are actually willing to pull this stuff out on stage. And I love it. I think, Targamas has played, 9 or 10 different champions, 11 games in the season. Broken Blade's played a ton of different champions. He's putting out a ton of insane damage. And I think this G2 team really has a chance to keep getting better and scaling over the course of the year. If Caps and Jankos can ever be the Caps and Jankos that are one of the best mid-jung duos in the world, and Broken Blade can be one of the better top laners in the LEC, Flockhead can, play safe and be reliable, Targamas can be a reliable playmaker with a champion Ocean, this G2 team can be very, very scary. Now, I don't think they've put it all the way together, and I don't think that this G2 team is going to be a world title contender like that, or anything like that this season. So it's hard for me to say that G2 is back, but man, this G2 rebuild seems to be going pretty successful. And again, we've seen rebuilds go absolutely disastrous. We've seen, rebuilds ruin some organizations. So the fact that 11 games into the season, G2 is tied for second, they're one game back of Rogue, that is very, very exciting. That is very, very great to see. And this coming week, it's going to be a big one for G2. They have games against SK, which should be very, very winnable, and their second matchup against Fnatic. If they take down Fnatic in this game, they will pull away from them. They will have a chance to, take second place in their sole possession, if not first place, depending on how the Rogue game goes. But then also being 2-0 against Fnatic in the regular season, that will be a very, very big statement. It will be interesting to see how this team does in the playoffs, how they're able to do, against some of these top teams in the playoffs, like Vitality, like Fnatic, like Rogue, some of these more experienced teams. But man, things so far are going pretty good for G2. Again, I have some question marks. There are some things I'm worried about. There are some things I'm concerned about. But it's spring split regular season. That's normal. And the fact that there is still so many things that can improve and can get better, but they're still winning games, they're still 8-3, that is a very, very good sign for the players, coaching staff, management, everything. And I think it's a pretty exciting time to be a G2 fan. But that is pretty much it for this video today, guys. Definitely drop a like if you did enjoy it. I would appreciate that so much. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about G2. Do you think they are legit? Do you think they're for real? Do you think they are title contenders this season? Or do you think they maybe still got a little bit of work to do? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. Subscribe, stay up to date on all my latest content. Hope to catch you guys in the next one. But until then, peace.